For 5 years, the boy touched his ear. Every doctor said the same thing. Nothing we can do. His father spent millions, flew to Boston, Switzerland, Berlin, begged specialists to look again. They all said he was born this way. Accept it. Then a maid found a file hidden in his study, and what was written inside that confidential folder will leave you speechless. Pause for 2 seconds and help me do something fun. Comment your city and country. I want to see how global this community really is, and I am looking for the 2 viewers watching the farthest apart today, so I can pin the winner. Now, back to the story, because things are about to get very interesting. Henry Prescott was 33 years old and a billionaire. Tech empire, private estate, more money than most people see in 10 lifetimes. But his son Leo couldn't hear voices at all. 8 years old, living in silence. Henry had married young, at 25. His wife died giving birth to Leo that same night, and when Leo was 3, a routine ear procedure left him unable to hear. The doctors all told Henry the same story after that: born this way, congenital nerve damage, irreversible, accept it. But Henry couldn't accept it because Leo was all he had left. So Henry kept searching, kept spending, kept begging God for an answer. He spent $8.7 million over 5 years chasing specialists who all repeated the same diagnosis. Leo had lost his hearing at 3, and for 5 years, Henry had been told it was congenital. What he didn't know, the diagnosis was a lie. And the proof was hidden in a locked drawer in his own house. Rebecca was a maid, 26. No degree, no credentials, just 3 semesters of nursing school she couldn't afford to finish. She'd learned sign language years ago working with her deaf cousin Jared, and she'd spent 1 clinical rotation in pediatric ENT before she had to drop out. She was 2 months behind on rent, desperate to keep this job that paid $4,800 a month. But she noticed something about Leo that every specialist had missed. He didn't act like a boy with nerve damage. He acted like a boy with something blocking his ear. And when she looked closer, she saw him wince and touch one specific spot. That wasn't congenital hearing loss. That was an obstruction. Something was in there. Something the doctors said wasn't there. Something hidden in a confidential file that would reveal the truth about Leo's silence. Rebecca Thrall was 26 years old and 2 months behind on rent. Her studio apartment had water stains on the ceiling, mold growing in the corners, and a landlord who called twice a day threatening eviction. She had $347 in her bank account. Rent was $1,200. Due yesterday. On her kitchen table sat her nursing school transcript. 3 semesters completed. 1 semester left. But the scholarship letter next to it said, denied. Insufficient funds to continue. She'd been 1 semester away from her RN license, 1 semester away from a real job, real money, a real life. Now she cleaned offices for $11 an hour and couldn't afford to eat most days. She'd worked 1 clinical rotation in pediatric ear, nose, and throat before the money ran out. She'd learned sign language years back when her cousin Jared went deaf after meningitis. She volunteered at the community center teaching basic ASL. None of it had led anywhere, until now. That's when she saw the job posting. Prescott Estate. Housekeeper position, $4,800 a month. She read it 3 times, $4,800. That was more than she'd ever made in her life, more than triple what she made now. It was also more than seemed real for cleaning toilets and dusting furniture, but she didn't care. She needed it. So she applied. The interview was at the estate itself. Rebecca took 2 buses to get there. When she walked through the gates, her stomach dropped. The mansion looked like something from a movie. Sprawling, white columns, gardens that went on forever. She'd grown up in a 2-bedroom apartment with 4 siblings. This place could fit her entire childhood block inside it. Mrs. Gable met her at the door. Older woman, gray hair pulled tight, expression that looked like it had never smiled. She walked Rebecca through the entry hall, heels clicking on marble floors, and didn't say a word until they reached a sitting room bigger than Rebecca's whole apartment. "The Prescott family values discretion above all else," Mrs. Gable said. Her voice was cold, clipped. "Mr. Henry has been through enough. His wife passed 8 years ago. His son has special needs. You are here to clean, not to ask questions, not to offer opinions, especially not about the boy. Do you understand?" Rebecca nodded. "Yes, ma'am." "The last girl we hired was let go within a week." Mrs. Gable's eyes narrowed. "She asked too many questions. She thought she could help. She was wrong. Can you follow instructions, Miss Thrall?" "Yes, ma'am, I can." Mrs. Gable looked her over, up and down, like she was inspecting produce at a grocery store. Then she said, "You start Monday, 8 a.m. Do not be late. Do not disappoint Mr. Henry. The staff entrance code is 7392. Security cameras in the study hallway are being repaired this month, but Mr. Henry values his privacy regardless. You'll have a key. Use it responsibly." Rebecca walked out of that mansion in a daze. She'd gotten the job. $4,800 a month. She could pay rent, buy groceries, maybe even go back to school someday. She sat on the bus ride home and whispered, "Okay, God, I need this. Please let me keep this." What she didn't know, keeping that job was about to become the hardest thing she'd ever done. Subscribe now and stay to the end, because I am going to show you one detail hidden in this story that quietly explains why medical records can be quietly altered to protect institutions, and you will not unsee it once I point it out. This is not just about one hospital. This is about a system designed to protect itself, and we are about to break down exactly how they do it, step by step. Rebecca's first day at the Prescott estate, she saw Henry Prescott exactly twice, both times from a distance. Both times he looked right through her like she wasn't there. He wasn't what she expected. She'd cleaned houses for rich people before. They were loud, demanding, always reminding you how much money they had. But Henry Prescott moved through his mansion like a ghost. Silent, slow, like he was walking through water. He wore expensive suits, but they hung on him wrong, like he'd lost weight and never bothered to get new ones. His hair was neat, but his eyes were empty. 33 years old, but he looked 50. The richest man in Ohio, and he looked like he had nothing. Mrs. Gable told her the rules on day one. Mr. Henry doesn't usually speak to staff. He doesn't want to be disturbed. If you see him, step aside. Don't make eye contact. Don't try to help. She said it like a warning. Like other maids had tried and failed, Rebecca learned fast that the mansion felt like a tomb. No music, no television, no laughter, just the sound of her footsteps on marble and the ticking of a grandfather clock in the entry hall. She cleaned the east wing first, dusted picture frames, polished mirrors. And that's when she saw the photos. Henry's wife. She was beautiful, dark hair, bright smile. In every photo she was glowing, pregnant, happy. There were dozens of pictures of her, but none of them showed the baby. None showed Leo. It was like time stopped the day she died. One afternoon, Rebecca was cleaning the hallway near Leo's room when she saw Henry sitting inside. Just sitting. In a chair by the window, watching his son sleep. Leo was curled up in bed, thin and small, and Henry stared at him like he was looking at something he'd broken and didn't know how to fix. On the table next to Henry was a photo of his wife, and next to that, a stack of medical journals, pages marked, notes scribbled in the margins, words Rebecca recognized from nursing school: cochlear implants, auditory nerve damage, conductive hearing loss, sensorineural hearing loss. Henry was trying to understand, trying to find an answer in books he couldn't read. Rebecca also noticed a folder from a tutoring service. Henry had hired sign language instructors, speech therapists, occupational therapists. He'd given Leo every resource money could buy, even if he couldn't emotionally show up himself. He sat there for 2 hours, didn't move, didn't speak, just watched his son breathe. Rebecca walked away quietly, but she couldn't stop thinking about what Mrs. Gable had said during the interview. His son has special needs. The boy Henry spent millions trying to fix, the boy he couldn't save, just like he couldn't save his wife. Rebecca met Leo on her 3rd day. She was cleaning the playroom, dusting shelves full of toys that looked like they'd never been touched, when the door opened. A small boy walked in. 8 years old, Mrs. Gable had said, but he looked 6, thin, dark circles under his eyes, blonde hair that needed cutting. He didn't look at Rebecca, just walked past her like she was furniture and sat by the window. He pulled out a box of Legos and started building. His hands moved fast, precise. He was making something complicated, a castle maybe, or a spaceship. Rebecca kept cleaning, trying not to stare, but she couldn't help watching him. He was so quiet, so focused, like the rest of the world didn't exist. Then he stopped. His face twisted. He dropped the Lego piece he was holding and pressed his hand behind his right ear. Not his whole ear, just one spot, right where the ear canal meets the skull, the mastoid bone. Rebecca knew that spot from her pediatric ENT rotation, and she knew that kind of pain. Sharp, localized. His eyes watered, he squeezed them shut. That wasn't nerve damage, that was pressure, obstruction, something physical pushing against tissue. Deep infections can refer pain to the mastoid area even when the problem starts in the canal. Rebecca's chest tightened. She'd seen that before during her clinical work. Congenital nerve damage didn't cause localized pain. It didn't cause pressure in one specific spot. It didn't make a child wince every time he touched the mastoid process. She walked over slowly, knelt down beside him. He didn't hear her coming. When she touched his shoulder, he jumped, looked at her with wide eyes, scared eyes. Rebecca lifted her hands and signed, "Are you okay?" Leo's face changed, surprise, relief, like he hadn't expected anyone to speak his language. He signed back, "Always hurts here." He pointed to the spot behind his ear. Rebecca signed, "How long?" "Long time," he signed, "since I was little." "Before you couldn't hear," Rebecca signed. Leo nodded. Then he opened his mouth like he wanted to say something else, but the door slammed open. Mrs. Gable stood there. Her face was red, angry. "Rebecca," she snapped, "Mr. Henry's office needs cleaning, now." Rebecca stood up. "I was just, now Miss Thrall." Rebecca glanced back at Leo. His face had closed off. The openness was gone. He'd picked up his Lego piece and turned back to the window, like their conversation never happened. But Rebecca's mind was racing. "Always hurts here, since I was little." That didn't make sense. Congenital nerve damage didn't cause localized mastoid pain. It didn't cause pressure. It didn't make a child wince every time he touched one specific anatomical landmark. Something was wrong. Not with Leo's nerves, with what was blocking his ear canal. Real quick, pause and drop a comment below. Tell me if you've ever been in a situation where you knew something was wrong but were told to stay silent. Maybe at work, maybe with a doctor, maybe in your own family. Share your thoughts, because this community is built on people who refuse to look away. Henry's private study was off limits. Mrs. Gable had made that clear. Mr. Henry's study is personal. You clean it once a week, Friday mornings. You do not touch his desk. You do not open drawers. You dust, vacuum, and leave. Friday came. Rebecca walked into the study with her cleaning supplies and stopped. The room felt different from the rest of the house, heavier. The walls were lined with bookshelves, medical journals, textbooks, all of them about hearing loss, cochlear implants, auditory processing, conductive versus sensorineural loss. Some had bookmarks sticking out, pages marked with notes in handwriting she recognized from the journals by Leo's bed. On the desk was a calendar. Rebecca wasn't supposed to look, but she couldn't help it. The pages were covered in appointments, crossed out. Every single one had the word "declined" written over it in red ink. Johns Hopkins, declined. Mayo Clinic, declined. A clinic in Switzerland, declined. Specialists who'd turned Henry away. Or maybe he'd stopped trying. Either way, the calendar looked like a record of failure. Next to the calendar was a business card. Rebecca picked it up. Dr. Marcus Whitmore, Pediatric Otolaryngology, Riverside Medical Center. The name sounded familiar. She'd heard Mrs. Gable mention Riverside once. Something about Leo having surgery there when he was little. Then Rebecca saw the file cabinet. Tall, metal, 4 drawers. The second one had a label, Leo, Medical Records. She walked over, pulled the handle, locked. She noticed dust on the lock, thick, like it hadn't been opened in years. She pulled again, still locked. She looked around the room, looked at the desk. Maybe the key was in there. But Mrs. Gable's voice echoed in her head. "You do not open drawers." Rebecca stepped back. She finished dusting, vacuumed, left. But she couldn't stop thinking about that locked drawer. What was in there? And why did it need to be locked? Why had no one opened it in years? That night, in her tiny apartment, Rebecca couldn't sleep. She kept seeing Leo's face. The way he winced, the way he touched that spot behind his ear. "Always hurts here. Since I was little." She pulled out her phone and typed Dr. Marcus Whitmore Riverside Medical Center into the search bar. His profile came up first. Pediatric ear, nose, and throat specialist. 20 years of experience. Top rated. Nothing unusual. She scrolled through articles, awards, publications. Everything looked normal. Then she found a forum. Medical professionals discussing hospital statistics. One post caught her eye. It was from 2019. The user wrote, "Anyone else notice that Riverside Medical Center's pediatric surgery complication reporting went completely silent after 2017? No hospital has 0 reportable incidents. Either they got perfect overnight or someone changed how they code outcomes." Rebecca's hands went cold. She took a screenshot. Read the post again. 2017. Leo lost his hearing 5 years ago. That was 2020, 3 years after the reporting went silent. She put her phone down, stared at the ceiling. Something was wrong, not with Leo, with his story. If you've ever felt dismissed by a doctor or an expert, you need to subscribe right now, because at the end of this video, I'm revealing one secret that changes everything about how hospitals hide complications. There's a reason Riverside Medical Center's records looked perfect after 2017, and when I show you the coding loophole they used at the end, you'll realize this happens everywhere. Trust me, the secret is worth it. Rebecca started leaving Leo small gifts. Nothing big, nothing that would get her fired. Just little things. Drawings, mostly. She'd noticed he spent hours in the garden staring at birds, cardinals, blue jays, sparrows. So she drew them. Left the drawings on the window seat in the playroom where he built his Lego structures. The first time, he didn't react. Just picked up the drawing, looked at it, and set it aside. But the second time, she found something waiting for her. A paper airplane. Folded perfectly. When she unfolded it, there were 2 words written inside. "Thank you." After that, they had a system. A secret language. If Rebecca tapped twice on any surface, it meant "I see you." Leo would tap back. Twice. "I see you too." It was small, simple, but it was theirs. And in that silent mansion, it felt like the only real conversation happening. 3 weeks into the job, Rebecca was dusting the library when she heard a sound. A whimper. Quiet. Pained. She followed it to the hallway and found Leo sitting on the floor, holding his head. His face was pale, sweating. He was pressing both hands behind his right ear, rocking back and forth. Rebecca dropped her cleaning supplies and ran to him. She knelt down, touched his shoulder. His eyes opened, tears streaming down his face. She signed. "Headache?" He nodded. Mrs. Gable would kill her for this, but Rebecca didn't care. She helped Leo to his feet and walked him to his room, sat him on the bed, closed the door. Then she sat next to him and signed, "How long has your ear hurt?" Leo looked at her for a long time, like he was deciding whether to trust her. Then he signed back. "Since the hospital. When I was little." Rebecca's chest tightened. "When you were little," she signed. "How little?" 3, he signed. 3 years old. Not birth. 3. Rebecca's hands were shaking, but she kept signing. "Before that, could you hear?" Leo nodded. His eyes filled with tears again. He signed slowly, carefully, like he was afraid of the memory. "I heard Daddy crying. Then I went to the hospital. Then quiet forever." Rebecca's blood went cold. She stared at Leo. This 8-year-old boy who'd been told his whole life that he was born broken, that his deafness was something that happened before he was born, something no one could fix. But he was telling her the truth. He wasn't born deaf. He remembered sound. He remembered his father's voice, and then a hospital took it away. She signed, "You remember hearing?" "Yes," he signed. "I remember Daddy's voice, and Mommy singing. She sang on a recording. Daddy played it for me. Before the hospital." Rebecca couldn't breathe, couldn't think. Every doctor had told Henry the same thing. Congenital. Born this way. Irreversible. But Leo was sitting right here, telling her they were wrong. He wasn't born this way. Someone made him this way. Someone took his hearing at age 3. And then they lied about it. Rebecca knew she had to tell Henry. She didn't have proof yet, didn't have the file. But she had Leo's words. "I heard Daddy crying. Then I went to the hospital. Then quiet forever." That was enough. That had to be enough. She found him in the garden on a Sunday afternoon. He was sitting on a bench near the fountain, staring at nothing. She walked over slowly, her heart pounding, her hands sweating. This could get her fired. But Leo's face kept flashing in her mind. The pain, the tears, the truth he'd been carrying alone for 5 years. "Mr. Prescott," she said quietly, "I'm sorry to bother you, but I need to tell you something." Henry didn't look at her. "What is it?" "I have a nursing background," Rebecca said. 3 semesters with a pediatric ENT rotation. And I noticed something about Leo. When he touches his ear, it's not random. It's the mastoid process, specific localized pressure pain that's not consistent with congenital nerve damage, that's consistent with canal obstruction or middle ear pathology. And he told me something. He said he remembers hearing before the hospital. He remembers your voice. Henry's head turned. His eyes were cold, hard. "My son has been examined by the head of otolaryngology at Johns Hopkins, the chief of pediatric surgery at Mayo Clinic, and specialists in Berlin. Do you have any of those credentials?" "No, but do you have a medical degree?" "No, but I—" "Then clean the house," Henry said. His voice was ice. "That's what I pay you for, not to give me false hope, not to play doctor with my son. I've spent $8.7 million in 5 years listening to experts. They all told me the same thing. He was born this way. Congenital sensorineural hearing loss. His auditory nerve never developed properly. I don't need theories from a maid who took a few classes." Rebecca felt like she'd been slapped. Her face burned. Her throat tightened. She nodded, turned, walked away. She made it to the service hallway before the tears came. She wiped them fast. Mrs. Gable couldn't see her cry. No one could. She finished her shift in silence, took the bus home, unlocked her apartment door, and sat on her bed in the dark. On her nightstand was a photo, the only one she'd kept. Her little sister, Emma, smiling, 12 years old, healthy. That picture was taken 2 weeks before Emma died, 2 weeks before a doctor dismissed their mother's concerns about pain after a routine surgery. "Just post-operative discomfort," the doctor had said. "Give it time." 3 days later, Emma was dead. Internal bleeding. Something that could have been fixed if someone had just listened. Rebecca stared at that photo. Then she looked at her eviction notice, her nursing school transcript, her empty bank account. She had 2 choices: stay silent, keep her job, keep surviving, or speak up, risk everything, and maybe save Leo from the same fate as Emma. Who was she to challenge the experts? Who was she to go against a billionaire and the best doctors in the world? She was nobody, just a maid. But she was a nobody who knew the truth, and this time, she wasn't going to stay silent. "I can't let this happen again," she whispered. She made her decision. If you're still watching, you're exactly the kind of person this channel was built for, so hit that subscribe button so you don't miss the next episode. Because this exact pattern shows up in another shocking case I'm covering soon, and the strategy Rebecca uses here becomes even more important in that story. Rebecca waited until 2 in the morning. She knew Henry's routine by now. He went to bed at 11, but lately she'd noticed lights on in his room past midnight. Leo had been having worsening headaches. Henry was listening, monitoring, barely sleeping. She'd have to be fast. She let herself in through the service entrance, punched in the code, 7392. The mansion was dark, empty. Rebecca's footsteps sounded too loud on the marble floors even though she was walking on tiptoes. Every shadow looked like someone watching. Every creak made her freeze. She remembered what Mrs. Gable said. Security cameras in the study hallway are being repaired. No one would see her, unless Henry was awake. She made it to Henry's study. The door was unlocked. She slipped inside and closed it behind her. Her hands were shaking, her heart pounding so hard she thought it might burst. This was trespassing, violating his trust. If Henry caught her, he wouldn't just fire her, he'd call the police. She'd go to jail, but she thought of Leo. I heard Daddy crying, then quiet forever. She thought of Emma, and she kept moving. The file cabinet was against the wall, still locked. Rebecca turned to the desk, pulled open the top drawer, pens, papers, nothing. Second drawer, files, tax documents, business contracts, then the bottom drawer. She pulled it open, and there, under a photo of Henry's wife, was a small silver key. Rebecca grabbed it, walked to the cabinet. Her hands shook so bad she could barely get the key in the lock. It clicked. The drawer slid open. Inside was a single manila folder. The label read, "Confidential, Attorney-Client Privilege." Underneath, in smaller letters, Leo Prescott, Medical Records, Internal Review Copy. Rebecca pulled it out, opened it. The first page was a surgical report from Riverside Medical Center. Dated 5 years ago. She read it once, then twice, then a third time because her brain couldn't process what she was seeing. Post-operative complication noted during routine myringotomy procedure. Retained foreign body, surgical sponge fragment, approximately 2 centimeters by 2 centimeters, inadvertently left in right external auditory canal during closure. Patient stable at discharge. Recommended follow-up, removal within 72 hours to prevent canal obstruction and infection. They'd left something inside Leo's ear, a surgical sponge, 2 centimeters, and they knew. They documented it. They recommended removing it within 72 hours, but they never did. Rebecca flipped to the next page. Her stomach dropped. It was an internal hospital memo, risk management review, signed by someone named K. Chen, hospital administrator. Case reviewed per standard protocol. Post-op complication reclassified under ICD coding revision to pre-existing congenital condition to maintain institutional quality metrics and avoid reportable adverse event classification. Attending physician Whitmore agrees to diagnostic revision per institutional risk management guidelines. External correspondence updated to reflect congenital sensorineural etiology. Internal documentation sealed per legal counsel recommendation. Patient-family counseling adjusted accordingly. Foreign body may become obscured by granulation tissue over time. Maintain revised diagnostic coding in all external documentation. Rebecca's hands shook so badly she almost dropped the folder. This wasn't a settlement Henry agreed to. This was an internal cover-up. They changed the diagnosis in their system. Told Henry his son was born deaf when they knew they'd caused it. And once the chart said congenital, every new specialist stopped hunting for a physical cause. They assumed the diagnosis was right and never looked deeper. This copy of the memo was in Henry's cabinet because someone, a lawyer or investigator he'd hired years ago, had obtained it and filed it away. The dust on that lock told her Henry never opened it. Maybe he couldn't face it. Maybe he didn't even know it was there. She pulled out her phone, started photographing every page, every word, the surgical report, the risk management memo, the signatures, the dates, the coded language that said, "We lied to protect our metrics." Her hands were trembling, but she kept going. She had to. This was proof. This was the truth. They knew. They knew the whole time. They left something inside a 3-year-old's ear during a routine procedure and then lied about it. Told his father it was congenital, irreversible. Let Henry spend $8.7 million chasing a cure that didn't exist because the problem wasn't in Leo's genes or nerves. It was in his ear canal. A piece of gauze, 2 centimeters, left there to rot for 5 years while they protected their hospital rankings. Rebecca put the file back, locked the cabinet, returned the key to the drawer under the photo. She checked her phone. 3:15 a.m. She had the photos, all of them. Now she just needed to get out. She opened the study door and froze. Henry Prescott was standing in the hallway, still in his pajamas, eyes red from lack of sleep, staring at her. His face was hard, cold, furious. "What are you doing in my study?" Rebecca's mouth went dry. "Mr. Prescott, I can explain. You broke my trust at 3 a.m. Henry's voice was shaking, not with fear, with rage. "I gave you a chance. I gave you a job. And this is how you repay me? Going through my private files? I've been up all night with Leo. He's getting worse. His fever won't break. And I come downstairs to find you in my study." "I'm not stealing," Rebecca said. "I needed to show you something." "You're fired. I'm calling the police." Henry pulled out his phone. "Look at this first," Rebecca said. Her voice was stronger now, steadier. She held up her phone. "Look at this, then call the police." Henry stared at her, then at the phone. "What is it?" "It's the truth about your son, the truth someone hid from you." "It's been in your cabinet this whole time." She handed him the phone. He looked at the screen. His face changed. The anger drained away, replaced by confusion. Then horror. He scrolled through the photos, reading. His hands started shaking. His face went pale, white, like all the blood had left his body. "This can't be real," he whispered. "This was in my cabinet. I couldn't face opening that drawer after the diagnosis. I just believed them." "Your son told me he could hear before the surgery," Rebecca said. "He remembers your voice. He remembers you crying. Then he went to the hospital for a routine ear procedure. Then silence. They left a surgical sponge in his ear canal, 2 centimeters, and then they changed the diagnosis in their system to make it look congenital. They lied to you about it. This memo shows they did it to protect their quality ratings, and once the chart said congenital, every new specialist stopped looking for a physical cause. They all assumed the diagnosis was correct." Henry collapsed against the wall. The phone slipped from his hands. "For 5 years," he said. His voice was broken, hollow. "For 5 years they let me believe he was born this way. I spent $8.7 million. I flew around the world. I begged God to fix something that was never genetic. And this was here the whole time, in a drawer I was too broken to open." Rebecca knelt down beside him. "Mr. Prescott, I think we can get it out, but Leo needs an ENT specialist. Tonight. He has an infection. If that sponge has been degrading for 5 years..." Henry looked at her. His eyes were red. "You're not licensed." "No. But I know what to look for, and I know who to call. There's an emergency ENT at Riverside who wasn't involved in the original surgery. If we go now..." "My son is already in prison," Henry said. "A silent one. He's been there for 5 years because I trusted them. Unless we try, he stays there forever." Then, from upstairs, a scream. Not a voice, a wail, raw, desperate. "Leo!" Henry bolted to his feet. They both ran, up the stairs, down the hallway, into Leo's room. The boy was on the floor, writhing, holding his head, his ear. Blood was coming from his right ear, trickling down his neck. His face was burning red. Fever. "The sponge is degrading," Rebecca said. "It's infected. He needs emergency ENT extraction. We need to get him to the hospital now." Henry looked at her. "What do we do?" "Get him in the car. I'm calling ahead. And pray I'm right." The emergency room at Riverside Medical Center was chaos. But when Henry Prescott walked in carrying his unconscious son, everything stopped. Rebecca had called ahead, told them everything. Post-operative retained foreign body, 5-year infection, risk of sepsis, life-threatening. The attending ENT surgeon, Dr. Sarah Okafor, met them in the ER. She'd reviewed the photos Rebecca sent, seen the internal memo. Her face was grim. "We need to get him into surgery now. That sponge has been degrading for 5 years. If it's caused mastoiditis or inner ear damage..." "Just get it out," Henry said. "Please." They prepped Leo fast. Sedation. Imaging first. The CT scan showed it. A foreign body, 2 centimeters, embedded in the external canal, surrounded by infection, covered by granulation tissue and scar. Pressing against the tympanic membrane, blocking everything. But the inner ear structures looked intact. The auditory nerve was there, functional, just blocked. Dr. Okafor took Leo into surgery. Henry and Rebecca waited. 4 hours. The longest 4 hours of Henry's life. When the doors opened, Dr. Okafor walked out. She was holding something in a specimen container, a rotted surgical sponge, black with infection, degraded beyond recognition. "We got it out," she said. "The canal is clear. The infection is extensive but treatable. His eardrum is intact. The ossicles are intact. The auditory nerve is intact. This was conductive hearing loss from mechanical obstruction, severe enough that voices never reached him. Once the swelling goes down and the infection clears..." She paused. "Mr. Prescott, your son is going to hear again. It won't be instant. It'll take days, maybe weeks for everything to heal. But he's going to hear." Henry collapsed into a chair, sobbed. Rebecca sat next to him, said nothing. Just sat. 3 days later, Leo woke up. The infection was responding to antibiotics. The swelling was going down. Henry was sitting next to his bed when Leo opened his eyes. Henry leaned forward and whispered, "I'm here, buddy, I'm here." And Leo's face changed. His eyes went wide. He turned his head, slowly, like he was hearing something he'd forgotten existed. He looked at his father's mouth moving, and then he smiled. a tiny smile, and whispered back, "Daddy, I hear you." Henry's voice broke. "You hear me?" Leo nodded. "You're quiet, but I hear you." Over the next 2 weeks, Leo's hearing improved. It came back in stages, muffled at first, then clearer. Then almost normal. The doctor said he'd need speech therapy, auditory processing support. His brain needed to relearn how to interpret sound after 5 years of silence. But the mechanics were there. The nerve was there. The sound was back. The hospital board at Riverside Medical Center launched an internal investigation immediately. Dr. Marcus Whitmore was placed on administrative leave the same day. State medical investigators opened a case within the week. 6 weeks later, criminal charges were filed: medical fraud, conspiracy to alter patient records, endangering a minor. The news called it one of the largest medical cover-up cases in Ohio history. Mrs. Gable came to Henry's study one afternoon. Rebecca was there, packing her things. Mrs. Gable looked older, tired. "I was told to keep staff away from the boy," she said quietly. "I was told it was for his protection. I didn't know what they'd done." "I'm sorry." Rebecca nodded. "I know." Henry stood in Rebecca's apartment 1 month later. She was packing, not because she was being evicted, because he'd offered her the guest house on the estate, rent-free, and a full scholarship to finish nursing school, in her name, and a job when she graduated, running a patient advocacy foundation he was starting, for families who'd been lied to by hospitals. "I spent $8.7 million trying to buy a miracle from experts who lied to me," Henry said. "God sent me the truth through the woman I hired for $4,800 a month." The last scene Rebecca ever saw at the Prescott estate was Leo sitting in the garden, wearing headphones, listening to a recording, his mother's voice, singing a lullaby Henry had recorded before she died. It was muffled, imperfect. His brain was still learning, but Leo had tears streaming down his face. He looked at Rebecca, signed, "Thank you for my voice." She signed back, "Thank you for reminding me of mine." Click the video on your right to see 3 other cases where medical records were quietly altered to protect institutions, the coding loopholes they exploited, and the one document that changes everything. You'll see the patterns, the mistakes they make when they think no one is watching, and the exact moment when the truth comes out.